somebody just handed you a job you never applied for. Maybe it was in the will, maybe the court just appointed you. Either way, you are now the personal representative of someone's estate, and you have no idea what that actually means or what you're supposed to do. Here's what surprises most people. This job is not just one task. Being a personal representative is not just pay the bills and hand out the money. It's a job that can stretch on for months. It involves real legal responsibility, and this is the part that can catch some people off guard. If you get it wrong, you can actually be held personally liable. So, what does this job really involve from the first day to the last? Let's walk through it. This video is for educational purposes only. It isn't legal advice because every estate is different. But let's talk about how this generally works. Here's the first thing worth knowing. The personal representative's job isn't really about you. Legally, you're what's called a fiduciary, or someone who has to act in the best interest of the estate and its beneficiaries, not your own interest, even if you're also a beneficiary yourself. And here's a second thing that surprises people. You generally can't just start acting the moment someone dies. There are some specific first steps that have to happen before you have any real authority at all. So, what are they? What comes after that? Well, step one is getting officially appointed. Even if you're named as a personal representative in a will, you typically aren't legally authorized to act until the probate court formally appoints you. That usually means filing a petition with the court, and once it's approved, receiving a document called letters testamentary. That's the paperwork that proves to banks and insurance companies and anyone else that you actually have authority to act for the estate. Once you've done that, you can move on to step two, which is taking inventory of the estate. Once you're appointed as personal representative, your first real task is figuring out what the estate actually consists of. Bank accounts, real estate, vehicles, personal property, investments, and debts. Many states require you to file a formal inventory with the court within a certain window of time after being appointed. Then, in step three, you notify creditors and you pay valid debts. This is a part people rarely expect. The estate typically has to notify known creditors and sometimes publish a notice for unknown creditors to give them a window of time to make claims against the estate. Legitimate debts like medical bills, credit cards, a mortgage generally have to be paid from the estate before anything can go to beneficiaries. Here's a common misconception. Personal representatives sometimes think they should just distribute assets to family quickly, especially if everyone's eager to move forward. But paying beneficiaries before debts and creditor claims are resolved can create real legal exposure for the personal representative personally. Okay, so after taking care of creditors and debts, you can move on to step four, which is handling taxes. The estate you're in charge of may need a final individual income tax return filed for the person who passed, and then depending on the size of the estate, potentially an estate tax return as well. Then, step five is where you manage and protect the estate assets all along the way. This can mean anything from maintaining a house so it doesn't fall into disrepair, to keeping insurance active, or prudently managing investment accounts, doing all this while the estate is moving through this process. Finally, in step six, you get to distribute what's left. Once the debts, the creditor claims, and the taxes are handled, the remaining assets get distributed to beneficiaries according to the will or according to state law if there wasn't a will. Then you can lastly work on closing out the estate. After everything else is done, the personal representative typically files an accounting with the court showing everything that came in, everything that went out, and requests formal closure of the estate. So here's an example. Let's talk about someone named Diane. She was named personal representative for her mother's estate, and after being appointed by the court, she finds out that her mother had a modest house, a small investment account, and about $40,000 of credit card and medical debt. Diane's siblings are anxious to know when they'll receive their share of the estate, but before Diane can distribute anything, she has to notify creditors, wait out the claims period, sell some investments to cover the debt, and file all the required paperwork with the court. And it ends up taking several months longer than her siblings expected. Not because anything went wrong, but because that's simply the order the law requires things to happen in. If you contrast that with her neighbor, who was a personal representative for an estate with no debt and one single beneficiary, that process moved much faster because there was far less to sort out. So same title, same legal duties, but very different timelines because the underlying estates were completely different. So to directly answer the question of what a personal representative actually does, well, the personal representative is generally responsible for getting formally appointed by the court, taking inventory of the estate's assets, notifying and paying legitimate creditors, handling any required tax filings, and protecting and managing the estate's property throughout the whole process, distributing what remains to rightful beneficiaries, and formally closing the estate with the court. Personal representative is a role with real legal responsibility attached. A personal representative who mismanages the estate, plays favorites, or distributes assets improperly can potentially be held personally liable for that. But exactly how this plays out, how long it takes, what's required, what taxes apply, how debts get handled, all that depends heavily on the size and complexity of the estate, whether there's a valid will, and the location where the estate is. Again, this is just a general overview, not a checklist for your specific situation. If you've been named personal representative or you're trying to figure out what's ahead of you, an attorney who can look at the actual estate and your specific case is going to be able to guide you through it far more precisely than any general explanation can. So if you've just taken this on, it's completely normal to feel like you're in over your head. Being a personal representative is a genuinely complex responsibility, especially while you're grieving. You don't have to navigate it by yourself. If you need some help or some advice, or if you'd like to understand how the law may apply in your situation, the attorneys at Woodbury Ybarra specialize in these type of issues. They have many years of experience. You can give them a call and mention this video to receive a free consultation. Their website and phone number are below in the description.